Hey guys, and welcome back. So I'm pretty sure you can tell from the title that this video comes with a massive trigger warning. I will be talking about my eating disorder. I will be talking about all the things that go along with that. And though I will be chatting about my recovery later on in the video, there is some stuff that I will be chatting about that may be triggering to some people. So if you are sensitive to that topic, please do me a favour and just click away. That would make me feel so much better. You're not missing anything. So thank you. Now this is not the first time I've tried to film this video because it took up so much of my life. And I could sit here for 2 hours and chat you through where this disorder started and where it took me to. But mainly there are 2 times where my eating disorder has taken over my life, and that was in my teenage years when I was around 15. Versus then in my 20s, it took over my life as well. Now, I won't be focusing too much on my teenage years, and that's for a specific reason. And I feel like that's because people have this idea that, yeah, you're a teenager. Of course, once you grow up, you'll grow out of it. And that's not true. You don't just grow out of an eating disorder. It's not just teenage years. It's not just being impressionable. I think people take away from the struggles of young people under the guise of you're just hormonal and you just don't know any better. You haven't lived life yet. You don't know what real sadness is. You don't know what this is like. And I feel like a lot of people haven't had the chance to make it to adulthood because they weren't taken seriously in their mental health struggles. And that breaks my heart. And I almost was one of those people. I almost didn't make it to adulthood because of my own mental health issues. But here I am. And I also want to make this very, very clear right now before I start talking about my past. My present is, and I'm not just saying this, like this is why I've put off filming this in the past, is because I am better. Like now, I can hand on heart say I'm better now. And that is for now, like it's an everyday process, but I never in a million years would have thought I'd be in the place where I am today. Little things like I've watched myself gain weight, I've watched myself lose weight, I've watched myself put on muscle, and I've not been triggered or I've not had self-loathing, because it used to be in the past where even when I was better, I would still freak out if that dress didn't fit me, and that's not better. That is not better. That is circumstantially better. So long as my weight stays the same, I'm fine. But I'm out the other side of that now, and I don't mind where my weight is. Now some people may say, Janet, that's because you work out a lot, and honest to God, what I did during lockdown was I probably did about 6 workouts for 3 months, and that's because I wanted to challenge myself to see if I could still eat like a human being without knowing I was going to be burning off these calories. And I did. And it was a nice little break from exercise. But it also showed me that my recovery is true. Like, I didn't feel upset about putting on weight or losing muscle and anything like that. So I feel like I'm finally in a very good place to talk about this, because I feel as a disorder, as an illness, it is one that is quite hard to beat. And though you do carry the scars of this illness around you mentally with you for a long time, that I like I said, I never thought I'd be in the position that I am in now. So clearly something's worked. So like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about my teenage years. Basically, I started getting ill probably like late 14 and 15 for me was the year of just disappearing. Now, I, at the time, had no idea why I was doing this. There was so many factors as to why I thought I was doing it, or, upon reflection over the years, I thought I was doing it. But through regular therapy and things, I've now finally been able to understand what I was going through. And I just find that fascinating, that if somebody was to sit down, 15-year-old me, and ask her why she was doing these things, She didn't have the vocabulary to explain what was going on. She was so lost. She was so confused. She just had to do it for some reason. She just didn't know why she was doing it, but she was doing it. And now as an adult, it's nice to have this knowledge for me now that I hopefully won't fall back into that pattern of behaviour again. But yeah, so I was 15 when it got really bad. So bad that I moved out of my parents' house. I lived with my nan, thinking that she wouldn't be wise enough to my sneaky ways of eating. You know, at the time, at 15 in Northern Ireland, you are doing your big exams. That, you know, you're constantly told by your teachers, like, these are the defining years. These are the years that'll make you, they'll make your future, you know. Jokes on them, I did music, but but there's so much pressure for only being 15 about your future. And I had no idea what I wanted to be. I had no idea what my talents were. I had no idea what my strengths were. I'd managed to find myself in the higher classes. But that also meant then you had the creme de la creme of smart people in your class. So you didn't really feel that smart at all. Humbling. But I, at the time now, these are, from looking back now as an adult, why I think I had this disorder. And at the time, I didn't feel like I was good at anything. I thought I was useless. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was just a waste of space, essentially. And those thoughts aren't foreign to a lot of people in their teenage years. But I genuinely, at one point, liked that I was good at something. You know, I couldn't be the funny friend. I couldn't be the smart friend. I couldn't be the pretty friend. So I was going to be the skinny friend. You know, I was going to be disgustingly skinny. That was going to be my talent, you know. It's so warped to think about that. Like, I know now I have a lot of things to offer this world. Like, I know my talents and I know my skills. But unfortunately, I didn't know them then. And that became my focus, was just losing weight. I also didn't really understand my want for control. I didn't discover I was a controlling person till I got to being an adult. Like, how could me, somebody who is very clearly a lot of the times out of control, how can I be somebody who is a control freak? But that's exactly it. Sometimes, to be mean to myself, I'd throw myself into these ways of being out of control. But the thing about an eating disorder is, for somebody who has control issues, you feel like you're in so much control. Now, at 15, what can you control? There's not a lot you can control. You know, you still have your parents there telling you what to do, where to be, what you can and cannot do. You have school. You cannot change the fact that you've got to do these exams. You have to go to these exams. You have to be in a certain room at a certain time at all times. We wore uniforms, so that was dictated to us. So I was in control of nothing, and I really felt it. And for me, that's whenever food became my means of control. And I loved it at the start. Like, that is all I had. I could say no to something. I could say no. And for me, I was like, the consequence of this, I get to be skinny, which is so stupid. But it's more than just the aesthetic. And I think that's what people forget. Like, an eating disorder doesn't have a look. You don't have to be a certain size to have an eating disorder. And people still argue about that. And that upsets me so much. That why it's only really, really, really skinny girls that get the help that they need sometimes. Not all the time, but more often than not. That's always the really skinny, emaciated girl that will get the help, where somebody who's a few more dress sizes bigger won't get that same help. And that is confusing to people, because that's what the media has told us, that anorexia has an aesthetic, and it doesn't. It does not. Because I learned that firsthand when I first reached out for help. I was skinny, but like I could pass off as fine. And I went to a counsellor and I told him, I don't want to say too much, but I told them that I had this issue, and nothing was done. Like, we didn't even really speak about it in that session, because that's how little it seemed to matter. I don't know. Like, it just seemed to be so batted off as a part of teenage years that I was allowed to keep going. I don't know. So I did keep going. And that was my start of not trusting adults and not even bothering to tell people I was suffering through something. My ways of, I don't want to go too much into it. Basically, I wouldn't eat for 5 days of the week. By the time I got to Thursday or Friday, I would allow myself to have hot chocolate because I needed to have some form of energy to get through. I'd spend my dinner money on diet pills. I'd eat cotton wool for breakfast. I'd drink vinegar because I heard it was good for losing weight. I don't know. All of these things are just sheer insanity. I was signed up to pro-anorexia websites, which I still, to this day, have no idea how they're still allowed to be a thing. It's disgusting. And I was then normalised to this behaviour. Not that I'm blaming that. It was still me. But, the fact that these things are allowed to go on, it normalised my behaviour. I thought it was okay. Because for me, I had no gauge of what weight I could reach before it was super duper bad. But then I went on these websites and I seen girls that were miles away from my weight and were still fine. So for me, I was like, it's okay. I have this under control because they're okay, right? And I don't want to name names, but there was a few people in music or on TV that were extremely skinny, and I figured that if they could get away with it, so could I. Why are they allowed to be super skinny and I'm not? And as a small framed girl, I got away with it for a very long time because people were just like, oh, she's just had a growth spurt, she'll be okay. It quickly wasn't okay. And like I said, I don't want to talk too much about my eating disorder as a teen, so I'll just really leave it there that before my 16th birthday, I had a few wise up moments, and I knew I had to get better, and I told my best friend so that I'd be held accountable, essentially. And though I physically got better very quickly, I didn't mentally recover for years after that. I was okay so long as I was still size X, right? I'm not going to say sizes, I'm not going to say numbers in this video because I find that can be triggering to people. I still wanted to be size X, and as long as I was size X or smaller, we were fine, So even through X Factor, I had bigger fish to fry. I had my suicidal ideations to figure out during that period of time. I had my depression and my anxiety, my stage fright, all of that kind of stuff going on. So that occupied me. And also I did want to be better. I think when I started getting my yeses and all of that kind of stuff, I didn't want to be somebody's role model for self-destruction like certain artists and TV folk were for me in my days. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want somebody to look up to me for being skinny and use me as the justification that I use those people as. So when I knew I was even going on TV, even for a little bit, I made sure that I looked fine and I could figure the mental stuff out later. And I didn't really figure it out. I just jumped from that issue to other issues. I found other ways to hurt myself, basically. And that occupied my time for years, really. My comeback to self-harm, my drinking and my drug abuse and all of those things, they occupied my time. And it wasn't until I got to my 20s again where it started to go sour again. I think I was 22, maybe. I can't remember the numbers. All those things I was really specific about in the book. So for factual stuff and numbers and things like that, that's all in the book. But for me right now, I don't really think about these things in much detail. But I was in my 20s anyway. And I was in a relationship as well, which is bizarre because I never thought I'd be able to get away with a mental illness like that in a relationship, but I was. And because I was close with this person, I would only eat when I was with them. I would only eat when I was around people. And I think for me, with the disorder, it is control based. It is definitely control based, because I, at that time in my life, also felt like I was out of control. I got sober as well, and I was playing that emotional whack-a-mole where I got my sobriety, I stopped self-harming, I'd stopped doing this, I'd stopped doing that. So I needed something, and for some reason I went back to my eating disorder. I didn't just pick it. I didn't go, oh, that looks good. That's not the way it was. And it took over my life again. But the most annoying thing about all of it was the fact that I was so productive. I was so productive. I think in the space of like 4 or 5 months, I starred in a film. I wrote the soundtrack for the movie. I made an EP of original songs and covers. And I also like went and did some shows. Did I tour? I toured. I did a whole tour. I went out to America. I was just flat out all the time. Singles, EPs, all of that. I think I did 2 EPs back to back. Or no, I did I Don't Know Song, and then I did my Christmas EP, and I was just so busy. And the reason why I achieved so much in that short period of time was because I wanted to distract myself from the emotional pain that I was going through. And the self-hatred I still possessed for myself. And I think it's not really talked about, but like when I got sober, I really, really, really had to start sitting with myself. And I had no coping mechanism really to deal with all of these years of self-hatred and pain. And I couldn't sit with myself, so I had to put myself through pain again. And I remember in the space of like 4 months, my weight plummeted. It just disgustingly plummeted, because I had learnt a new form of control that I didn't have back in the day. Because I used to have to starve myself for 5 days a week. And now I had learnt this new skill where I could eat one thing a day. You know, I had the control to eat sometimes, but not all the time. And it just was so painful. I hated myself so much. I can't believe I was able to carry that on for so long. And I definitely remember I lied to the faces of you guys. I lied to the faces of the people that I love. I lied to my doctor. I lied to everybody. I lied to myself. Honestly, I really did. Because I felt like I had control. I felt like I could stop at any minute. But that bubble was burst one day after I went to see my doctor, and I said, we're going to get better. And I went to have a bowl of Cheerios, and I couldn't even take a bite of the Cheerios. And even before that, I couldn't even take them off the shelf. I stood there with the cupboard door open, just telling my brain to tell my hand to take the Cheerios from the top shelf, and I couldn't. Because I couldn't eat that. And at the time, I smoked as well, and that night that I couldn't eat the Cheerios, I sat on the doorstep smoking the cigarette, just being like, we have no control. We have lost control. We lived under this illusion that we could stop this at any time, and we cannot. It was petrifying. I was so frail. I was so tired. And I don't know what I wanted from it. I still to this day don't know what I wanted from it, really, except for the fact that I could control something. I had control over something, you know, and it made me feel better having that, you know. And it's just terrifying what your brain is capable of. And then this is all from my perspective as well. Like, I am ignoring the feelings of those around me in this story that I'm telling you about my life. Like, my poor mother, all that woman ever wanted for me was good things. She brought me into this world. I was born pure, like all of us, little pure babies. I took that body that was 100% healthy and I tore it apart constantly. Why? And then you beat yourself up because you're like, some people don't even have the money for food. Some people are starving. And you're selfish enough to starve yourself on purpose. And I just can't explain the internal agony that you're going through to put yourself through that pain. I used to fly to countries with my scales and my suitcase so that I could weigh myself wherever in the world that I was. And the worst part about this illness is that it's never enough. There's no such thing as a perfect weight. There's no such thing as a goal weight, because as soon as you hit that goal weight, you just lower the bar again. And every single time you lose more weight, you're just more empty. Like, when I first started when I was younger, I used to get happy when I lost weight. I used to feel like I was achieving something, that I was finally good at something. But by the end, you are just a shell of a person. It stops being amazing. It starts just being fact that you're losing weight. You just get used to hating yourself. And you get your kicks out of hiding it from people. You get your kicks out of other things. There's nothing sexy about going to bed at 7 o'clock at night because you don't have energy. You know, you think to yourself in the early doors of this disorder, like, I'm going to look so good. But you never love yourself enough to wear that dress. You never love yourself enough to approach that guy that you think you'll approach whenever you're X weight. None of it matters. Because the real issue is that I didn't like me, and no amount of weight would change that. And I can I can assure you that when you gain weight or when you lose weight, that issue doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. You still hate yourself at the end of the day, and nothing makes that better. Nothing. So for me, recovery happened that night on the doorstep when I was smoking my cigarette. When I stared up at the sky and I realised I had no control over what I was doing anymore. That I was so broken and I was so afraid. How was I going to get better when I couldn't even eat a bowl of Cheerios? How was that possible? But I knew I had to. And I took weird approaches to my recovery, and I will admit that people had a lot of questions. Like, I went vegan, and I know I'm not vegan anymore, but that was because of my health. I was told I couldn't be vegan, and that is a whole different ballgame. Vegans, don't get mad at me in the comments, but you can speak to my dietitian. But for me, it gave me that control that I was after, because I needed it. I needed a stepping stone. I couldn't just magically get better. So I went vegan. I had the control. I started to have energy, which led into me learning how to work out, which I then took really seriously. And when I injured my ankles after running a stupid amount of miles every week, I was like, oh, we have a problem with this too, so we need to reevaluate. So it was not a smooth recovery ever for me. And it didn't change until I went to rehab for my drinking, but I also went to rehab for all of my issues. And they take your control away from your food, just in case, you know. You have to eat everything. Just to make sure that... And that's when I realised I had circumstantial recovery. That I was only fine because I, up until that point, had full control over my eating, full control over how much or how little I ate. And when that control was taken away from me, I was like, oh my God, no, I'm getting fat. And that was the voice coming back again. So I realised that I had a lot of work to do with that. And I did. And it's not been easy. And I have no idea where the full changing, turning point, whatever you want to call it, came for me. But one day, not that long ago, I just realised that I love myself. I deserve good things. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to eat food. My fear isn't of being fat, by the way. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being like a bigger size. And I think that that's what people misconstrued with that illness, is like, oh, you must hate fat people. It's like, no, I hated myself. It's not the act of being smaller. It's the act of control and self-loathing and pain and punishment. You know, it's... But that freedom I have today is unimaginable. Like, just proving it to myself through lockdown. Eating whatever I wanted. Whenever I wanted. We're going to gain weight? Who cares? Because we have to get through this pandemic, because that's a bigger issue. And your mental health is very important. And I swear to God, if eating some jelly babies makes you feel okay for 5 minutes, then we're going to eat the jelly babies. But it's very hard to get to the place where I am today. It took a lot of work. And I sometimes like to take that away from myself, but I really, really worked hard. And I feel like I know where people are coming from when they think it's not possible. When you think, that will never be me. I will never be able to look in the mirror and be like, hey, beautiful. I get that. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I was going to be signing up for the rest of my life. And also because there are people who perpetuate that. There's so much self-learning involved, and a lot of it's painful, and a lot of it hurts, and it sucks, and nobody likes to look in the mirror, especially when it's about our deepest, darkest issues and our insecurities and our past and why we are the way we are now. But through facing those horrible truths about myself, looking at the things that are not my best qualities, but accepting that that's how I am and that's who I am, and looking at what I can change, and just not taking the easy road. Not just coming to terms with that's the way it is. Because it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. I had my first Christmas dinner last year where I didn't feel guilty over what I ate. I never thought that would be a thing. I never ever thought it would be a thing. You know. But it's so possible. And there are support groups for it. There are recovery groups. And I have been to those, and I do go if I feel like I'm in a low place. Or sometimes I go just to try and share the message that it does get better, that it's possible. But I'm sorry to everybody I hurt along the way. I'm sorry to my parents. I'm sorry to my brothers. I'm sorry to my team who stood by me through my relapse with my eating disorder and didn't quit on me. I'm sorry to you guys who I lied to the faces of on camera at gigs. But thank you for not giving up on me. And the person watching this who relates too much, please at least relate to the fact that it gets better. Or at least aim for that. Don't take the easy option. It's so hard. It's such a long process. It's not a fun process, but it's doable. Because I did it. And I honestly I had somebody call me a lost cause once. So if I can do it, you can. I'm going to end it there. I'm going to turn my camera off now. But the reason why I'm crying is because I just wish the people who think it's impossible could know that it's possible. And I think back to me in the olden days where I thought that I could never get better. And that to exist was suffering. It's not. It's fun. You can have fun. Life is fun. And it's hard. But there's always good moments that are worth taking yourself out of the pain for. I'm so sorry. My camera died, but that is a sign that I should just shut my pie hole. Just thank you for watching. I hope it helps. I hope it helps you understand even the illness a bit better. Or even if it just helps you understand me a bit better. I don't know. But I just wanted to put my story out there and live my truth. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're having a happy day and that the world is treating you the way you deserve. Okay, bye.